Imagine standing on a precipice where the darkness is so dense, it actually feels heavy in your lungs.
Right, like a physical weight.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
A dark that physically eats the light from your torch, leaving you completely blind while the sound of monstrous scraping bones echoes off these invisible walls all around you.
A truly harrowing situation for any explorer.
Absolutely. Well, welcome to the Deep Dive, everyone. This is a Dark Souls Special Edition podcast brought to you by Haunted Podcast with hosts Gary and Emily.
We are so thrilled to have you with us today.
We really are. And before we step into the abyss today, I want to strongly encourage you, the listener, to check out the Haunted Podcast.
Yeah.
Please make sure to like and subscribe to their incredible content.
Yeah, they do phenomenal work.
They really do. They explore the absolute darkest corners of storytelling, and your support just means the world to them.
It really makes a difference.
So, for today's journey, we are establishing a very specific, grounded framework. While the world of Lordran is widely known as a fictional realm, today we are treating it as a serious historical and archaeological study.
Right, we're looking at it through an academic lens.
Exactly. We are poring over the primary texts, the surviving explorer journals, and, the physical artifacts left behind by those brave or maybe just foolish souls who ventured into one of the most terrifying subterranean locations on historical record.
Yeah, and our overarching mission today is to really analyze the history, the rich folklore, and the bizarre unnatural biology of a place formally designated in the historical record as the Tomb of the Giants.
The Tomb of the Giants. Just the name is intimidating.
It really is. And this is a lightless, incredibly treacherous cavern system located deep, deep beneath the catacombs.
Way down there.
Yeah, so we are going to unpack the ecology of this place, the desperate survival tactics of the cartographers and knights who actually tried to map it.
Which is wild to even think about.
Right. And ultimately, we will examine its absolute ruler, Gravelord Nito.
Man, I can't wait to get into Nito. But usually when we talk about exploring caves or subterranean ruins, we just think of standard spelunking.
Sure, yeah, headlamps, ropes, that sort of thing.
Right, you bring a torch or a lantern, and while it is dark, the darkness is simply an absence of light. It's a passive state.
A completely normal geographical feature.
Yeah. But the text describing the transition from the upper catacombs specifically, the area known as Pinwheel's Lair down into the Tomb of the Giants, they paint a completely different picture.
A much more sinister one.
Totally. The historical records literally call it a light-devouring domain of death. So what is actually happening to the environment the exact moment you cross that threshold?
Well, when you step past the threshold of Pinwheel's Lair, you are not just entering a space where the sun fails to reach.
Okay, so it's not just a deep cave.
No, not at all. Based on the archaeological data and, the really harrowing accounts of survivors, we can deduce the physical properties of the specific darkness.
Right. It behaves like an oppressive particulate miasma.
A particulate miasma.
Yeah, think of it as a dense, suspended atmosphere of necromantic soot that actively swallows ambient light.
Wait, it actively swallows it?
Yeah.
So the normal biological mechanics of the human eye, like your pupils dilating to let in more light, those are rendered completely useless.
Your biology fails entirely down there.
That is insane.
Right, because in a normal cave, if you sit in the dark for, say, 20 minutes, your eyes adjust.
Yeah, you get your night vision.
Exactly. You might begin to make out faint shapes or the outline of a cavern wall based on just the minuscule reflections of ambient light.
Just tiny photons bouncing around.
But in the Tomb of the Giants, the particulate matter in the air absorbs photons before they can ever reach your cornea.
Wow.
You could sit on a ledge down there for a century, and it would remain an absolute suffocating void.
So you're essentially blind. Permanently.
Yes. Explorers were stepping into a literal sensory deprivation chamber. And because of that, the primary hazard they faced immediately was not actually the wildlife. Oh, right, because you can't even see where you're walking.
Exactly. It was the architecture.
And the terrain is just a waking nightmare.
It's brutal.
Yeah, I mean, you are not walking on flat cave floors. The primary pathways are massive, slanting sarcophagi.
Stone coffins.
Right. These giant stone coffins serve as crude, incredibly treacherous bridges over sheer drops into an abyss where you just cannot see the bottom.
It's terrifying.
Reading the early expedition journals, the sheer terror of arriving entirely unprepared just leaps off the page. We have accounts of seasoned knights, literally crawling on their hands and knees, weeping, blindly feeling the cold stone in front of them, just to make sure they did not crawl off a cliff.
The psychological toll of that kind of navigation just cannot be overstated.
I can't even imagine.
Imagine the vertigo of knowing a fatal drop is inches away, but being completely unable to see it.
My stomach drops just thinking about it.
Yeah, well, before specialized tools were brought into the tomb, their only method of navigation was the use of prism stones.
Oh, right, the stones.
Yeah, these are small, faintly glowing pebbles, synthesized from basic titanite.
Okay.
Desperate explorers would drop them over ledges into the void to test the depth.
And those stones, they don't just light up the floor, right? The journals mention a very specific auditory feedback.
Yes, this is a fascinating mechanic. If the stone fell a short, survivable distance, it would emit a soft chime.
Kind of like a safe signal.
Right. But if the drop was fatal, the stone would emit a piercing, violent shriek upon impact.
Oh, that is so morbid.
It is. The entire path through the upper sections of the tomb is marked only by these scattered, faintly glowing stones left behind by those who came before.
Like a glowing graveyard.
Essentially, yes. It is a breadcrumb trail left by the dead and the terrified.
Crawling in the dark while listening to stones scream is a fast track to losing your mind.
Without a doubt.
I mean, eventually the archaeological record shows that explorers figured out crawling blindly was just a death sentence, and they developed tools of illumination.
They had to adapt or die.
Yeah, and there are 3 primary tools that successful historical figures used to survive this zone, and the sheer disparity between them is just fascinating to me.
It really highlights the different disciplines of the explorers.
Definitely. So first, there is the cast light spell.
Right. The cast light spell is a remarkable piece of recovered history. It was originally created by the ancient, long-lost civilization of Ulyssil.
Okay, so it's old magic.
Very old, and from a purely practical, tactical standpoint, it is the most elegant solution.
How so?
Well, the spell conjures a bright orb of pure, concentrated light that hovers independently directly above the explorer's head, cutting through the miasma.
Leaving both of your hands entirely free.
Exactly.
Which is huge. You can hold a sword in one hand and a heavy shield in the other. In a tomb full of hostile entities, that seems like the only logical way to travel.
It is the optimal setup.
So why didn't every single explorer just use this spell?
Because of the immense cognitive barrier to entry.
Oh, right. It's magic.
Yeah, casting this spell requires a rigorous threshold of arcane cognitive development. It's documented in the old academic systems as requiring a 14 in the intelligence metric.
Right, the INT stat.
This represents a deep, institutional understanding of arcane physics and reality manipulation.
So not just anyone can do it.
No, a standard knight, a frontline mercenary, or just a wayward traveler simply would not possess the neural pathways or the academic training to conjure it.
Right. They didn't have the magical equivalent of a PhD, so they were just out of luck.
Precisely. Furthermore, the spell has a strict temporal limitation.
It runs out.
Yes, the arcane matrix destabilizes over time, meaning the light eventually burns out.
That's bad.
If you are halfway across a narrow, slanted sarcophagus when your concentration wavers and the light extinguishes,
you are instantly plunged back into fatal darkness.
Entirely exposed and blind.
Man, so if you were not a highly trained arcane scholar, you had to find alternative methods. Which brings us to the second option found in the historical record.
The Sunlight Maggot.
Yeah, the Sunlight Maggot. This is where the biology of this world gets deeply uncomfortable.
Uncomfortable is an understatement. It is a profound biological anomaly.
Totally.
The Sunlight Maggot is not native to the tomb. It is sourced from the distant subterranean volcanic ruins of Lost Izalith.
Which is a whole other nightmare of a location.
Yes, and it is, quite literally, an oversized bioluminescent parasite.
A parasite that you willingly place onto your own skull.
Yes, you wear it as a helm.
That is just revolting.
It is grotesque. The creature wraps its appendages around the cranium and emits a permanent, passive, intensely bright light.
Okay, so I get why they want the light.
Right. Explorers coveted this creature because it provided the same immense tactical benefit as the cast light spell.
Leaving both hands free for combat.
Exactly. But it never ran out of energy, and it required zero arcane intelligence.
I am trying to put myself in the shoes of an explorer making that choice.
It's a tough call.
You are so utterly terrified of the dark that you are willing to let a volcanic, glowing insect bond with your head.
Fear makes people do irrational things.
It speaks volumes about the sheer desperation the tomb inspired. But as the maps show, Acquiring the maggot required traversing a lava-filled wasteland filled with demonic entities.
Lost Izalith is not a casual detour.
Right, a journey most surface dwellers never even attempted.
And that geographic barrier left the vast majority of explorers with only one viable option.
The third tool.
Yes, the third, most common and from a survival standpoint, most dangerously flawed tool of all.
The skull lantern.
The skull lantern.
It is the iconic artifact of the tomb. But its mechanics force the user into a terrifying tactical dilemma. Let's really break down how this thing actually operates in the field.
To understand the danger, consider the physical act of using it.
Okay.
The lantern must be actively raised and held up to project a beam of light capable of piercing that necromantic soot.
So you had to keep your arm lifted.
Yes. And because it requires a hand to hold it aloft, it permanently occupies the hand normally reserved for a shield.
Let's contextualize that for the listener just to picture it. Imagine you are exploring a derelict, collapsed mine shaft.
A very dark, dangerous place.
Right, and you hear something massive moving towards you. You have a flashlight in your left hand and a crowbar in your right.
Okay.
You can hold the flashlight up to see the predator, or you can drop the light, grip the crowbar with both hands, and try to defend yourself in absolute pitch blackness.
That is exactly the scenario.
You can see, or you can fight at full capacity, but you cannot do both simultaneously.
The mechanics of the skull lantern force that terrifying binary choice every single second you are in the tomb.
That is so stressful.
It is. The exact moment you lower your arm to brace for an impact, or the moment you need both hands to swing a heavy weapon with sufficient force to stagger a monster.
You plunge yourself right back into the void.
You are fighting blind.
And we haven't even touched on what the lantern actually is. Because this isn't crafted from brass and glass by a blacksmith.
No, they are harvested biological artifacts.
Harvested?
Specifically, they are the severed heads of the necromancers who operated in the upper catacombs.
Just horrifying.
The archaeological descriptions of these items are incredibly grim. They are partially decayed skulls that actually still retain drooping locks of hair and mummified beards clinging to the bone.
You are holding a decapitated head by the hair.
Essentially, yes.
How does it even generate light? Like mechanically?
Well, the necromancers used their own skulls as catalysts for their dark magic.
Oh, I see.
So a residual spark of that pyromantic and necromantic energy remains trapped within the cranium.
Like a battery that won't die.
Precisely. When held aloft, the flame ignites within the eye sockets. But the lantern serves a secondary vital purpose beyond mere illumination.
There's more to it.
Yes. The specific wavelength of light it emits reveals hidden, glowing path markers etched into the walls of the tomb.
Oh, like invisible ink, basically.
Exactly like that.
Markers left by the architects of the tomb that standard torches or even the cast light spell cannot reveal.
Right. It guides you along the intended, albeit treacherous, path.
It is so clever.
And the combat logs note one final desperate function. In a state of pure panic, if an explorer is completely cornered, the skull lantern can be swung as a crude, blunt force weapon.
Wait, really? You hit things with it?
Yes, and because of the magical flame trapped inside, it actually deals a burst of fire damage upon impact.
The imagery there is just wild. Your sword is knocked away, your footing is slipping on a ledge a foot wide, and you are literally bludgeoning a monster in the dark with the flaming skull of a dead wizard.
Desperation breeds innovation.
I guess so. And you would need every desperate weapon you could find, because the environment is merely the stage. We need to look at the actors upon that stage.
The flora and fauna of the tomb?
Right. The standard guard force of this subterranean necropolis consists of what are simply classified as giant skeletons.
Yes, the heavy infantry, essentially.
These are massive, bipedal, humanoid constructs wielding oversized swords and greatbows.
They're very formidable.
They act as the rank-and-file sentries. But they are not the apex predators.
No, they are not.
The true terror of the tomb, the entity that dominates the nightmare logs of every single surviving expedition, is the skeleton beast. Or, in the colloquial slang of the explorers, the skeleton dog.
A skeleton dog.
Let's do a deep biological and anatomical analysis of these things, because calling them a dog feels like a massive understatement.
It is highly inaccurate.
They look like a crime against nature.
They really do. They defy the standard biomechanics of this world entirely.
How so?
Well, these creatures share the immense scale and the dense, fossilized bone structure of their giant skeleton brethren.
Okay.
You are looking at femurs the size of tree trunks, massive human-like rib cages, and oversized skulls.
Just huge bones.
However, their physical assembly is entirely warped. They do not walk upright.
Yeah.
They have been twisted into a feral quadrupedal posture.
On all fours. But they are just bone. There is no muscle tissue, no ligaments, no tendons connecting these massive joints.
Biologically, it makes zero sense.
So how is a quadrupedal skeleton capable of movement, let alone the sheer, terrifying agility described in the journals?
It connects directly back to the environment we discussed earlier.
The darkness.
The ambient necromantic miasma. It is not just a visual obstruction, it is a power source.
Oh, wow.
These beasts are animated entirely by the dense energy permeating the tomb.
Like invisible puppet strings.
Exactly. This energy acts as a substitute for a muscular skeletal system, creating a powerful, invisible, magical tension between the joints.
So they don't get tired.
Never.
That is terrifying.
Because they are completely unburdened by the biological limits of lactic acid buildup, muscle fatigue, or the need for oxygen, their movements are shockingly explosive and deeply erratic.
They just go 0 to 60 instantly.
Right. A living creature of that size would have a predictable rhythm to its movement based on weight distribution and muscle contraction.
You can anticipate a bear's lunge.
Yes, but the skeleton beast just snaps forward with mechanical violence.
Which perfectly explains the lethality documented in the combat logs.
It's unmatched.
There is one specific maneuver that every survivor mentions. Their signature lunging flurry attack.
Ah, yes. The lunging flurry.
When I read the breakdown of how this attack functions, it sounded less like a combat maneuver and more like a localized natural disaster.
The physics of that specific attack really illustrate why it was so universally feared and why standard military tactics just completely failed against it.
Break it down for us.
Consider the sheer mass of the creature. We are talking about hundreds of pounds of dense, magically reinforced bone.
Okay.
When the beast launches itself forward in this lunging flurry, it strings together multiple rapid-fire strikes in the span of a second, throwing its entire mass behind each blow.
A boulder rolling down a hill, essentially. The momentum is unyielding.
Exactly. If an explorer attempts to stand their ground and block this flurry with a standard medium shield, say, a typical kite shield used by surface knights, the kinetic impact is devastating.
It just shatters them.
The first strike heavily damages their physical stamina. The second strike shatters their guard completely, knocking their shield arm away.
Leaving them open.
And the third and fourth strikes tear directly into their armor.
And even if you possess superhuman stamina and actually manage to hold your shield up to the entire flurry, the kinetic transfer doesn't just disappear.
No, physics dictates it has to go somewhere.
Right.
The force of the blows violently shoves the defender backward several feet.
Which is bad news on a cliff.
In a wide-open courtyard, that is a minor tactical disadvantage. You get pushed back, you reset your footing.
Sure.
But in the Tomb of the Giants, where you are engaged in combat on slanted sarcophagi ledges barely wider than your own shoulders.
You push backward a few feet means you step off into the void.
Exactly.
The beast doesn't even need to inflict a fatal wound. It just uses physics to throw you into the abyss.
Gravity does the rest.
So if these entities hit with unrelenting force, and you cannot reliably block them without plummeting to your death, what did the historical survival strategy look like?
Well, the surviving documentation points to 3 distinct, highly specialized tactical countermeasures developed by those who made it out alive.
Okay, what's the first one?
The first was entirely evasive, relying on stealth and sensory manipulation.
Sneaking past them.
Yes, explorers utilized a specific artifact known as the Slumbering Dragon Crest Ring.
How does a ring help you fight a giant bone monster?
It doesn't help you fight, it helps you remain entirely undetected.
Oh, I see.
The ring generates a localized aura that dampens the vibrations of footsteps, rendering the wearer completely silent.
That's incredibly useful.
Very. We must understand the sensory ecology of the skeleton beasts. In a pitch-black environment, visual acuity is useless.
Right. They can't see you anyway.
Exactly. The beasts hunt via vibration and sound, sensing the heavy, metallic footfalls of knights on the stone.
So by masking that vibration, the explorer essentially becomes a ghost.
Precisely.
You could slip right past their aggression range, provided you didn't, accidentally bump into one in the dark.
Which was always a risk. But evasion was not always geographically possible. Sometimes a beast blocked a critical choke point.
You have to go through them.
That required the second tactic, overwhelming force.
Okay, brute force.
This strategy necessitated the use of ultra-great swords, or massive bludgeoning weapons, such as the dragon tooth.
The dragon tooth.
Yes, a literal fossilized club harvested from an everlasting dragon.
Wow. You were fighting scale with scale.
Exactly. But the tactic was perilous. The explorer would use the dark to their advantage, creeping to the very edge of the beast's sensory range.
Right on the perimeter.
Then, relying entirely on explosive muscle memory, they would leap forward, initiating a massive jumping attack.
Putting everything into one swing.
The goal was to deliver a single catastrophic strike containing so much kinetic force that it shattered the beast's structural integrity.
Dispersing the necromantic energy, holding it together before the creature could even react.
Yes, an instant kill.
High risk, astronomical reward. I mean, if you miss, or if the beast survives that first hit, you are completely out of stamina and entirely defenseless against the inevitable lunging flurry counterattack.
Which is why the third tactic was often preferred by those with the aptitude for it.
And what's that?
Exploiting the beast's primary elemental weakness, fire.
Which makes sense chemically. We are dealing with ancient, desiccated bone.
The bones of the skeleton beasts are dry and incredibly brittle.
Perfect kindling.
Furthermore, the necromantic vapor that acts as their connective tissue is highly combustible.
Oh, that's interesting.
Explorers who possessed a mastery over the ancient discipline of pyromancy, specifically high-yield spells like the Great Chaos Fireball, were remarkably effective.
They could just blast them.
A direct hit would not only blast the creature with raw kinetic force, but it would violently ignite the very energy animating it.
Reducing a terrifying apex predator to a pile of smoldering ash in an instant.
A very clean solution.
It highlights the adaptability of the human mind. Thrust into an environment that actively suppresses human biology, they found ways to weaponize silence, gravity, and flame.
We are very resourceful.
But the beasts and the darkness were not the only threats down there. Where there are dead explorers, there are scavengers.
Ah, yes. The human element.
We need to examine one of history's most notorious, complex, and deeply frustrating figures, Patches the hyena.
Patches is a fascinating sociological subject within this grim historical record.
He really is.
You typically find him lurking near the tomb's first established base camp, a small, primordial bonfire situated on a ledge overlooking a massive, seemingly bottomless pit.
Just waiting.
To understand Patches, we have to analyze his psychological profile and his methodology. He is the ultimate opportunist.
He doesn't want a fair fight.
He does not hunt. He survives entirely by preying on the inherent greed and blind trust of others.
And he isn't just an indiscriminate killer. He operates with a very specific, deeply ingrained prejudice.
He harbors a pathological hatred for the religious elite.
The clerics.
Specifically the clerics of the Way of White, which is the dominant religious institution of the surface world.
Right.
When an explorer first approaches him by the bonfire, one of his immediate questions is to inquire about their profession. He asks, point blank, if they are a cleric.
I always found that interaction so tense. If the explorer proudly identifies as a cleric, perhaps expecting, camaraderie or respect for their holy order, Patch's demeanor shifts instantly.
It's a night and day change.
The feigned friendliness vanishes, and he becomes openly hostile, viewing them as hypocrites and zealots.
But if the explorer denies any affiliation with the church, Patches resumes his persona as a friendly, albeit rough around the edges, merchant.
He plays the part well.
He employs a brilliantly simple narrative arc to spring his trap. He points toward the sheer drop into the darkness just beyond the bonfire.
The bottomless pit.
He leans in and tells the explorer that he has found a fine stash of treasure located just down that hole, and he is willing to split it.
It preys on the exact reason most people venture into ancient ruins in the first place,
Yeah.
The promise of wealth.
Greed is a powerful motivator.
The explorer, likely exhausted, battered, and desperate for a reward to justify all the horrors they've faced, steps to the edge. And the moment they lean over to peer into the dark to spot this supposed treasure,
Patches violently kicks them squarely in the back,
sending them plummeting over the edge into the abyss.
It is sociopathic, but incredibly efficient.
It really is. He doesn't have to draw a sword or risk his own life in a fight. He lets gravity and the crushing darkness do all the heavy lifting.
Minimal effort, maximum reward.
And as the explorer is falling, Patches gleefully shouts after them, completely dropping the facade. He yells something to the effect of, "The trinkets I'll be stripping off your corpse, that's the real treasure."
He operates on the cynical assumption that human greed will consistently override situational caution.
And he's usually right.
He simply waits for the sounds of a struggle to cease, and then climbs down at his leisure to harvest the armor, weapons, and accumulated life essence of his victims.
But history is full of ironies, and this trap provides one of the greatest in the archaeological record of the tomb.
It really does.
Because Patch's trap actually drops the explorer directly onto some of the most historically significant and valuable artifacts in the entire necropolis.
Wow.
If an explorer survives the fall, they don't just find a pile of bones.
The contents of that specific pit represent an archaeological gold mine.
What's down there?
First, you find the remains of previous victims, proud, heavily armored knights whose historical resonance, their souls, can be harvested.
So it actually is treasure.
Yes. More practically, for immediate survival, you find a skull lantern resting on the ground, which was a lifeline for explorers who had been kicked down there without a light source.
A huge lifesaver.
But the most profound discovery is the tragic, silent figure of a deceased blacksmith.
This is the detail that absolutely fascinates me. What is a master blacksmith doing at the bottom of a scavenger's trap pit, deep inside a subterranean graveyard that actively hates the living?
It's a great question, and it requires us to engage in some historical extrapolation based on the artifact the blacksmith is clutching.
Okay, let's hear it.
The corpse is found holding the Large Divine Ember.
The Large Divine Ember.
We need to understand what an ember is in this context. It is not just a hot coal. It is a petrified spark of divine will, a relic of secret church rites.
So it's highly sacred.
Its sole purpose is to allow a highly trained, specialized blacksmith to forge weapons imbued with holy power.
Weapons that theoretically rival the armaments of the gods themselves.
Exactly.
So this is a supreme religious artifact, completely antithetical to the necromantic energy of the tomb.
Precisely. Its presence in the deepest sanctum of Gravelord Nito, the administrator of death, is deeply incongruous.
It doesn't belong there.
No. The prevailing historical theory is that this blacksmith was not an explorer, but a vital part of a grand, yet ultimately catastrophic, holy crusade.
An invasion force.
The Way of White likely sanctioned a massive military expedition deep into the tomb to cleanse it of the undead menace.
And rather than forging the weapons on the surface and carrying them down, they brought the forge and the blacksmith to the front lines. They intended to establish a holy foothold in the dark.
But the crusade was a slaughter.
Complete disaster.
The knights were overwhelmed by the skeleton beasts and the crushing dark. The expedition shattered, and this master blacksmith, carrying the most important holy relic of the church, was either chased into the pit or fell into it during a retreat.
Ultimately dying in the dark and taking the secrets of the Large Divine Ember to his grave.
It's a very bleak end.
It is a devastating environmental storytelling moment. It represents a massive clash of historical powers, the organized holy forces of the surface world attempting to conquer the primordial, chaotic domain of death, and just failing utterly.
And the evidence of that holy crusade extends beyond the dead blacksmith.
There's more.
The tomb houses another remnant of the church, one who is very much alive and remarkably dangerous.
Oh, Paladin Leroy.
We must examine the records of Paladin Leroy.
Paladin Leroy is a legend in the lore of the Way of White. The texts suggest he was the very first undead paladin produced by the church, a champion sent into the catacombs on a holy mission.
A true zealot.
Yet the historical records from survivors show that Leroy violently invades the expeditions of passing explorers near the deepest exit of the tomb. Why is a holy champion slaughtering innocent travelers?
It speaks to the psychological degradation caused by the tomb.
It breaks people.
Prolonged exposure to absolute darkness, combined with the catastrophic failure of his holy mission, the isolation of being trapped deep underground, likely fractured his mind.
He just snapped.
Leroy attacks anyone who crosses his path. He may view all intruders as agents of the Gravelord, or, more tragically, he may simply be hunting explorers to claim their humanity.
Desperately trying to sustain his own fading sanity and stave off hollowification.
Exactly. Survival at any cost.
The combat logs detailing the fight with Leroy are incredibly stressful to read. I mean, this is not a duel in a wide-open arena or a grand hall.
Far from it.
He ambushes you on a notoriously narrow cliffside path with the solid rock face on one side and a sheer drop into the abyss on the other. And his loadout, his weapons are absurdly massive.
His equipment is iconic. It's designed for overwhelming blunt force trauma rather than precision.
Brute force.
He wields an enormous divine great hammer, simply known as Grant, and he carries the Sanctus shield, a holy relic that continually, passively regenerates his cellular tissue, healing his wounds in real time.
Healing while he fights. That's so unfair.
It's a huge advantage.
And the metallurgical properties of Grant alone are staggering. It looks like a solid block of blessed iron on a stick. Because it is so heavy, a single swing from Leroy carries immense inertia.
The spatial dynamics of the fight dictate the entire strategy. If you try to stand your ground and block a two-handed swing from Grant on that narrow cliff,
the sheer kinetic transfer will throw you backward, straight off the edge into the void, exactly like the skeleton beasts.
Exactly. You cannot block him.
But physics is a double-edged sword, isn't it?
It certainly is. Leroy's massive momentum can be his undoing.
How so?
Because he swings with such aggressive, unyielding force. If an explorer anticipates the strike and dodges at the exact right microsecond, Leroy strikes nothing but air.
He just whiffs it.
The massive weight of the hammer continues its arc, pulling his center of gravity forward, and Leroy will literally throw himself off the cliff.
That is amazing. It is a tense, high-stakes dance on the edge of oblivion where a single misstep by either party results in instant, unceremonious death.
The margins for error are zero.
But let's rewind a bit, because we skipped over a monumental detail. We discussed the dead blacksmith in Patch's trap pit holding the Large Divine Ember. But I have to ask, how did any historical explorer actually extract that artifact and live to tell the tale? The records make it clear it wasn't just sitting in an empty room.
Far from it. The trap pit was essentially a kill box.
The kill box.
The corpse of the blacksmith was guarded by a terrifying cluster of 6 giant skeletons.
6 massive sentries in a confined, pitch-black space.
Yes. The geometry of the pit made traditional combat suicide.
I can imagine.
For a melee fighter, dropping into that enclosure was akin to jumping into a meat grinder. The sheer volume of giant, rusted blades swinging simultaneously in such a tight space meant that blocking, dodging, or finding an opening to strike was mathematically nearly impossible.
Just a wall of blades.
Yet the artifact was recovered. The journals of survivors record a few ingenious, highly desperate tactical approaches.
The first tactic I found in the logs is grimly titled the suicide run.
It is a literal description of the event.
So they actually just planned to die.
Explorers would utilize a rare artifact known as a ring of sacrifice. This is a magical band designed to preserve a person's life essence, their memories, and their physical belongings upon violent death.
By breaking itself instead of the person.
Shattering itself to rewrite the temporal consequence of dying.
So they drop into the pit, completely ignore the 6 giant skeletons bearing down on them, sprint through the swinging blades, grab the Large Divine Ember from the blacksmith's cold hands, and simply allow the skeletons to butcher them.
They accepted inevitable, violent death to secure the artifact.
That is dedication.
The ring would shatter, and they would awaken at their last established base camp, likely the bonfire near Patch's bruised, traumatized, but clutching the ember.
A kamikaze mission for the sake of archaeological recovery.
Sometimes it's the only way.
Unbelievable. But what if you were an explorer who refused to rely on magical resurrection? What if you wanted to survive the encounter and systematically clear the room?
That brings us to a tactic widely known as the bottleneck drop.
The bottleneck drop.
This is a masterclass in exploiting environmental geometry and gravity.
Walk us through it.
An explorer would drop into the pit, immediately triggering the aggression of all 6 skeletons. Instead of fighting, the explorer would sprint directly toward the exit ladder located on the far wall.
Running for their life.
The massive skeletons would blindly, aggressively pursue.
But because of their sheer size, they can't all fit.
Precisely. They cluster and bottleneck at the narrow base of the ladder, stumbling over each other, entirely unable to climb it quickly due to their corrupted biomechanics.
They're just a tangled mess of bones at the bottom.
Right.
And the explorer, who is already halfway up the ladder, suddenly stops fleeing.
The explorer climbs just high enough to be out of reach of their swinging blades.
Okay, setting the trap.
They equip the heaviest, most oversized weapon they possess, perhaps a Zweihander or a demon's great axe.
Something massive.
They leap backward off the ladder and perform a plunging attack directly into the clustered mass of skulls. The sheer kinetic force of a heavy weapon, exponentially multiplied by the acceleration of gravity, would often crush the spinal columns of all 6 giants simultaneously in one catastrophic impact.
An anvil falling into a ravine. Incredibly satisfying to visualize.
It's extremely effective.
And for the scholars, the sorcerers who didn't possess the physical strength to wield a massive great axe,
They utilized meticulous arcane methods, primarily light refraction and sensory deprivation.
Sneaky magic.
By combining the ring of fog, which bends light around the wearer, rendering them semi-transparent with the slumbering dragon crest ring to silence their footsteps, an explorer could become almost entirely imperceptible.
Basically invisible and silent.
They would stand on the upper ledges overlooking the pit and carefully pick the giants off one by one using precision-ranged magic.
They're just sniping them.
They would strike a skeleton, wait for it to lose their invisible scent, and strike again, systematically dismantling the guard force without ever triggering the swarm.
Work smarter, not harder.
Absolutely.
Now, recovering the Large Divine Ember makes logical sense. It is a holy relic capable of forging god-tier weapons.
It has immense utility.
But there is another artifact recovery mission documented in the tomb that defies all logic. I am talking about the covetous silver serpent ring.
Ah, yes. The covetous silver serpent ring. It is an artifact deeply intertwined with the concept of pure, unadulterated greed.
Greed seems to be a theme down here.
It is enchanted to passively boost the soul yield, the life essence absorbed from any slain foe, by 20%.
That's a massive boost.
To a struggling explorer trying to rapidly amass power in a hostile world, it is an incredibly alluring, almost hypnotic prize.
But the location of this ring, the absolute madness required to acquire it. I was reading the cartographer's route. You do not just find a hidden door.
No, nothing that simple.
You literally have to sprint and jump blindly off a cliff into total pitch-black nothingness.
It is an act that defies every instinct of human self-preservation.
It's insane.
To acquire the ring, explorers had to navigate to a very specific, unmarked outcropping of rock, orient themselves toward a patch of absolute blackness, take a running start, and leap out into the void.
Hoping for the best.
They had to trust, based entirely on whispered rumor or perhaps the faintest distant glint of the item far below, that they would land on an invisible narrow ledge rather than plunging thousands of feet to their deaths.
A literal leap of faith driven entirely by greed.
Purely by greed.
And let's say you make the jump. You land on this tiny outcropping in the dark. You see the corpse holding the ring. You grab it thinking you have outsmarted the tomb.
But you haven't.
You haven't.
You have triggered its immune system.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
The folklore and the trap analysis surrounding this specific artifact are deeply unsettling. The tomb is not a passive environment. It possesses a sinister, reactive intelligence.
It does, you're there.
The exact moment the ring is lifted from the corpse, a geological trap is sprung. The explorer is instantly surrounded by what are classified as bone towers.
Explain the biological mechanics of a bone tower, because it is grotesque.
Bone towers are spontaneous, violent fusions of skeletal remains.
Okay.
Imagine hundreds of skulls, shattered ribs, and femurs rapidly assembling and erupting directly out of the solid stone floor like jagged biological stalagmites.
Right out of the ground.
They emerge in a tight circle, completely boxing the explorer in on the narrow ledge, thrashing wildly.
It is as if the earth itself is reacting to a theft.
The tomb fiercely guards its hoard.
You try to take the ring of greed, and the environment literally rises up to swallow you whole. It is poetic, but terrifying.
It is a harsh lesson.
And it transitions us perfectly to the ultimate subject of our historical study. The entity that claims ownership over all of this darkness, all of these traps, and all of this death.
We have finally reached the lowest geographical point of our descent.
The bottom of the barrel.
The absolute bottom of the necropolis where the miasma is thickest. It is time to examine the historical records of Gravelord Nito, formerly known as the First of the Dead.
To understand the sheer scale of what an explorer was facing, we have to contextualize Nito's place in history. This isn't just a powerful necromancer who set up shop in a cave.
He is so much more than that.
Nito is a foundational mythological figure. We have to look back to the very dawn of the Age of Fire.
Mm-hmm.
He's the holder of one of the original Lord Souls, discovered within the first flame itself.
Which places him on the absolute highest historical and metaphysical tier of existence.
He's a god.
He operates on the same level as Gwyn, the Lord of Sunlight, and the Witch of Izalith. In the context of this world, Gravelord Nito is a god.
A god of death.
He was a pivotal military commander in the primordial war against the everlasting dragons.
What was his role in the war?
While Gwyn hurled lightning to peel apart their stone scales, Nito unleashed a weaponized miasma of death and rapid decay that introduced the very concept of mortality to the immortal dragons.
They couldn't even die until he made it possible.
Exactly. Rotting them from the inside out.
Following that apocalyptic victory, He didn't build a shining city like Gwyn did in Anor Londo. He took on a universal mandate.
He became the Lord of Death, the administrator of mortality to all living beings.
Yet his existence is defined by profound isolation. He does not rule from a throne.
No, he slumbers in a massive sealed sarcophagus at the absolute lowest, darkest point of the Tomb of the Giants.
Just sleeping in the dark.
He simply rests in the dark, utilizing a network of followers known as the Gravelord servants to spread localized misery and curses across the surface world using parasitic items called the Eyes of Death.
But if an explorer manages to breach his inner sanctum, they disturb that slumber, and they are met with a being whose anatomy is completely unprecedented in the historical record.
It is a horrific sight.
Let's do a biological breakdown of the Gravelord, because Nito is not just a giant skeleton wearing a crown, is he?
No, standard biology does not apply to a Lord Soul. Nito is a horrific amalgamation.
What does he actually look like?
He is a towering, lumbering, a mountainous mass of countless human and giant skeletons fused together with decaying cloaks and hardened necromantic resin into a single, terrifying entity.
A walking mass grave.
The skeletal arms of the dead literally protrude from his chest and back, writhing independently. He doesn't just represent the concept of death. Physically, he is composed of the dead.
And his mere presence alters the atmosphere. He exudes a literal miasma of death.
It is a toxic, localized aura that poisons the air for several yards around him.
Just being near him is lethal.
Simply standing near the Gravelord begins to rapidly deteriorate the cellular structure of a living being.
The combat logs describing engagements with Nito read like a desperate fight for survival against a natural disaster.
He is overwhelming.
He wields a massive curved blade crafted from the bones of the fallen, referred to as the Gravelord's sword. But his magical moveset is what makes the fight so devastating.
His magic is brutal.
The tactic that stands out to me the most is the Gravelord sword dance.
It is an overwhelming display of his absolute dominion over the earth and the dead buried within it.
How does it work?
The attack begins with an auditory cue. Nito emits a chilling, echoing scream that reverberates through the cavern.
Okay, so you hear him scream.
A microsecond later, massive, jagged blades of bone erupt violently from the stone ground directly beneath the explorer's feet, regardless of where they are positioned in the massive cavern.
It tracks you. You can't just run to the other side of the room to escape it.
It requires constant, erratic movement and perfect spatial awareness. If you stand still for a moment after hearing that scream, you will be impaled from below.
And if you manage to close the distance and get within striking range, he punishes you with the death wave.
Nito curls inward, condensing the dense miasma surrounding his form, and unleashes a localized concussive explosion.
A shockwave of rot.
It is a wave of dark, toxic energy that fills the immediate area with concentrated decay. The blast wave staggers the explorer, knocking them off balance, while simultaneously flooding their bloodstream with lethal toxins.
I was trying to articulate what fighting Nito must have felt like for a historian or a knight. It is not like fighting a traditional warlord or even a dragon.
No, it's very different.
You are essentially fighting a sentient graveyard.
Yeah.
Because while he is screaming and erupting swords from the ground and poisoning the air, he is also constantly regenerating a personal army of skeletal minions to swarm you.
That is the crux of the tactical nightmare. Nito is never truly fighting alone.
He always has backup.
When an explorer drops into his cavernous arena, he is immediately flanked by standard skeletons that relentlessly pursue the intruder. Furthermore, if the explorer panics and wanders too far into the back of his massive cavern to create space,
they will inadvertently wake the giant skeletons resting in the dark, bringing them into the fray.
Exactly, making the situation infinitely worse.
So facing a god made of corpses, who constantly resurrects an army, in a toxic room filled with hidden giants, how did anyone ever defeat the Gravelord? What did the successful military strategy look like?
The historical records detail a strategy requiring ironclad discipline and highly specialized weaponry.
Okay, what's the first step?
The first pillar of the strategy was geographical discipline. An explorer had to drop into the arena and force themselves to stay exactly where they landed, near the entrance.
Don't move.
They had to weather the incoming swarm and wait for Nito's massive, lumbering form to slowly approach them.
Let him come to you.
By refusing to retreat, they avoided waking the giant skeletons in the back of the cavern, effectively controlling the variables of the battlefield.
You command the space by refusing to yield an inch. I love the psychological fortitude that requires. But what about the smaller skeletons swarming you at the entrance?
That required the second pillar. divine weaponry.
Go back to the embers.
If an explorer struck down the smaller skeletons with a standard steel broadsword, the bones would shatter, but Nito would simply reanimate them seconds later using the ambient miasma.
An endless loop of skeletons.
To counter this, explorers used the very weapons forged by the Large Divine Ember we discussed earlier. Striking the skeletons with holy divine power permanently severed the necromantic tethers animating them.
The bones stayed broken.
Yes.
Which isolates the Gravelord. It strips away his army, turning a chaotic swarm into a one-on-one duel.
And once it was just the Explorer and the Lord of Death, they exploited his most glaring, fundamental weakness.
Fire. Which is incredibly ironic from a historical perspective.
Deeply so. Despite possessing a Lord Soul and godlike status, Nito's physical form is fundamentally composed of dry, ancient bone and rotting cloth.
He's basically a giant pile of kindling.
He is sluggish, lumbering, and highly combustible. Explorers who had mastered pyromancy rained concentrated fire upon him,
just burning him away.
The flames rapidly consumed the dry bone and the necrotic resin holding him together.
The first of the dead, the entity that helped bring down the immortal dragons, ultimately brought it down by the ancient discipline of flame manipulation.
It's a poetic end.
Explorers literally reduced the god of death to a pile of smoldering ash on the floor of his own tomb.
It serves as a profound historical testament.
What does it tell us?
It proves that even the most primordial, godlike forces in the world possess a vulnerability that human ingenuity, discipline, and sheer desperate willpower can exploit.
What an unbelievable, harrowing journey. We have descended from the suffocating particulate darkness of the upper tomb, navigated the sheer drops utilizing screaming stones, survived the predatory physics of the skeleton beasts, outsmarted the treacherous traps of Patches and the zealous fury of Paladin Leroy, all the way to the meticulous, fiery defeat of the Gravelord himself.
It's an incredible historical arc.
It really is. I want to sincerely thank you, the listener, for joining this intense historical expedition into the dark with us today. Your curiosity makes this all possible.
We appreciate you tuning in.
And a quick reminder once again, please support The Haunted Podcast with Gary and Emily by liking and subscribing to their show. Their deep dives into the macabre are truly essential listening. Now, before we extinguish our lanterns and sign off, I want to hand it over to our expert for one final thought.
Thank you. Here's something for you to ponder as we finally leave the crushing dark and return to the surface.
Okay.
We have spent this entire session studying Gravelord Nito as the ultimate administrator of death, a being whose original primordial mandate was to bring an end to all living things.
Right.
Yet look at his domain. The Tomb of the Giants is teeming with restless, violent, immortal skeletons that fundamentally refuse to stay dead.
That's true.
Is this chaotic, unending, undead state a catastrophic failure of Nito's historical mandate to bring true, peaceful death to the world? Or is it possible that this horrific, unending cycle of reanimation is exactly what a world ruled by the sheer concept of death was always meant to look like?
That is a chilling philosophical thought to end on. The difference between death as an ending and death as a state of being. Keep seeking out the history hidden in the darkest corners of the world, everyone. We will see you next time.